Hello, and in this video we're going to think about cellular respiration. So cellular respiration is incredibly important. It is the way that energy is made available in the cells to do work, and all cells need to be able to do work. This might include building new molecules like protein synthesis. It might involve contracting muscles if it's an animal. It might be active transport. Moving molecules against their concentration gradient requires energy. It might be sending nerve messages. Or if it's a mammal or a bird, generating heat. Or maybe it's an insect that can produce its own light through bioluminescence. But all of these things require energy to do this work. And the energy arrives in an ecosystem via the sun. So we have the sun here. The sun here feeds in light energy or radiant energy into plants. Plants can photosynthesize. So we could have a green plant here capturing the sunlight energy, and it will be photosynthesizing. And as a result of photosynthesizing, it makes the molecule glucose. So the energy has gone from being light energy or radiant energy into a stored form of chemical energy inside the bonds that make up the molecule of glucose. This chemical energy is then transferred into another molecule called ATP, which is easy to transport around the cell to different places for the cell to use for work. So let's have a little bit of a think about, a little bit more about ATP. ATP is its full name is adenosine triphosphate. So that's here, adenosine triphosphate. That means that it has a portion of its molecule called adenosine, which is made up of adenine, which is a base. You'll meet adenine when you do DNA. It's what the A base is in DNA. Ribose, which is a 5-carbon sugar, and 3 phosphates, hence triphosphate. And you'll see this little sign here. This is the high-powered molecule. And when the cell converts ATP into ADP over here, you can see that it takes off one of its phosphates, because now we have become a diphosphate molecule. We've lost a phosphate and we've released all this free energy. That's what's going to be used to do work. So ATP is a universal energy carrier. It has got appeal in every single cell, does the same thing, uses this energy currency, a bit like paying money. And when you've got the ATP, it's the store, and you break off the last phosphate to release the energy to do work in a cell. So if we think about cellular respiration, there are actually 2 pathways. We can have a pathway with no oxygen, so we could take the glucose and without oxygen we can react it, or we can do a pathway with oxygen. Without oxygen, it's called anaerobic respiration. So we've got anaerobic respiration. We get very minimal amount of ATP produced when we do anaerobic respiration. It happens only in the cytoplasm, outside of the organelles, so actually in the cytosol itself. And there are 2 different pathways that can result when we have no oxygen, when we have anaerobic respiration. If it is in a yeast cell, we end up with ethanol and carbon dioxide, and you'll be familiar with that because of fermentation. If it's in a bacterial cell or in the cells of our bodies, in our muscles, if we don't have enough oxygen, our final product from anaerobic respiration is lactic acid. And both of these blue products, so the ethanol and the lactic acid, they still have quite a lot of stored energy in the molecule themselves. They have not been completely broken down, so that glucose has not been completely broken down because there wasn't enough oxygen to do that. So when you do break down glucose completely, that is called aerobic respiration. And aerobic respiration is the best way to produce lots of energy from that glucose molecule. So to release the chemical energy stored in the bonds of the glucose into lots of ATP molecules with the chemical energy inside those that can then be used for lots of work. This time we start off the reaction in the cytosol outside the organelles, just like we do with anaerobic respiration, but then the products at the end of that bit go into the mitochondria, and that's where we squeeze out every last bit of chemical energy from the glucose molecule. So this is why we sometimes hear the mitochondria referred to very badly as the powerhouse of the cell, because without the mitochondria getting involved with the oxygen, you don't get to release all of the potential that's being stored in the glucose. So the products at the end of aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide and water. We have fully oxidized that glucose molecule and released every bit of energy we can from it. Now, if you think about glucose and setting fire to it, this is the sort of thing that happens in this little video here. This poor unsuspecting birthday boy is blowing on his cake, and all of the powdered sugar gets ignited by the candles. Now, this is not what happens in our bodies. This is an uncontrolled burning of sugar in air. That is not what's happening in respiration. We do not get heat and light in a quick and uncontrolled release like this explosion here. What we do get, however, when we think about cellular respiration, is a series of enzyme-controlled reactions that are very small changes in each step, and they are resulting in a controlled transfer of chemical energy from the glucose to the ATP. And because of that, we are able to get lots of ATP out in a way that does not end up in a big explosion. So there are actually 4 parts to cellular respiration, and we are going to very much gloss over the biochemical details because we don't need them for our course, but they are very complex. And this stage here on the left, glycolysis, that is common to aerobic and anaerobic, and you can see that you make 2 molecules of ATP. If there is oxygen present, we go on to do all of these reactions. But if there's no oxygen, you just stop here and pyruvate becomes either ethanol or lactic acid, depending on what organism you're in. But if oxygen is present, pyruvate can go into the mitochondria. So this brown organelle here is a mitochondria, and you can see that there are lots of reactions and lots of different things going on. So we make a 2-carbon molecule that gets fed into a cycle of reactions called the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, depending on which book you're reading, and that produces some more ATP, and then the products from the Krebs cycle get fed into the electron transport chain, which is happening in the inner mitochondrial membrane, and that produces lots of ATP, hence the mitochondria being a powerhouse, although we're not going to use that phrase. So cellular respiration overview is that it is allowing a transfer of energy from a stored form in glucose into a stored form in ATP that can readily be broken, so take off its last phosphate to release that energy in a controlled manner for every cell to do all the work that requires energy.